Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Today's big story is the economy. A day before the annual budget is presented, India's growth story looks on track. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has said that India will be the fastest growing major economy in the world. This will be an election budget. We're waiting to see what's in store. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine has taken another turn, and another one may be in the making. The US is preparing to take on China, although the administration cannot agree on the threat assessment as of today. In the Philippines, onions are the biggest headliners. In New Zealand, it's the eggs. We're building a show where we have something for everyone, and we hope you like what we put together for you today. Starting with the headlines. India will grow at 6.5% in the next financial year. This year's economic survey is out. It declares that India's recovery from the pandemic is complete. The Eurozone economy will avoid a recession this winter. It is projected to record growth of 0.1% in the fourth quarter of 2022. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel. He wants Israel and Palestine to de-escalate and restore calm. China's latest target is the Czech Republic. Its president-elect spoke to Taiwan's president on the phone. And angry China says it has quote-unquote trampled on its red line. And in France, hundreds of workers are protesting on the streets of Paris. They're opposing President Macron's plan to raise the retirement age to 64. It gives me no joy to say this, but another war may be in the making. America versus China, and it could happen in the next 2 years. The assessment comes from the US Army. We have the details, and we are also tracking their moves. Sample this. The US is expanding its military access in the Philippines. The NATO chief is touring Asia as we speak. The UK is pushing for India and Japan to join the AUKUS military alliance. These may seem like unrelated developments, but when you connect the dots, the bigger picture emerges. The US and its allies are preparing to go to war with China. A top American general has issued the orders. He has asked his commanders to get ready for combat. This is General Mike Minion. He oversees the US Air Force fleet of transport and refueling aircraft. Recently, he wrote a memo. It begins on a grim note, and let me quote from what he said. "I hope I'm wrong. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. He's talking about fighting China here. Why does he think that there will be a war? He offers some compelling reasons in this memo, and I'm quoting again. Xi secured his third term and set his war council in October 2022. Taiwan's presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a reason. US presidential elections are in 2024 and will offer Xi a distracted America. Xi's team, reason and opportunity are all aligned for 2025. In other words, the US and Taiwan will go to polls next year, and this American general thinks that this distraction will be used by China as a leverage. Interestingly, the US Defense Department has rebutted this memo. An official statement says, and I'm quoting again, "These comments are not representative of the department's view on China." So the Pentagon either does not fear a war or does not want to say it. As for their president, he can't seem to make up his mind. Last year, he said the US will respond to an invasion of Taiwan militarily, that he'll send American troops to fight China.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
That's the commitment we made, he says. Biden is referring to the Taiwan Relations Act. It says if Taiwan is attacked, the US will come to the island's defense. His government was quick to clarify that America's policy on Taiwan has not changed. They call it strategic ambiguity. Now, we're not sure about strategic anymore, but there is ambiguity for sure. Meanwhile, the US military is preparing for all scenarios. Last week, the US Marine Corps opened a new military base. It's on the Pacific island of Guam. It's called Camp Blas. The base will host as many as 5,000 US Marines. The US is also talking to the Philippines. They're expected to announce a new deal soon. American troops will get greater access to military bases in the Philippines. And this is going to be very significant. These bases in the Philippines are strategically important. US troops can use them to mount operations in two flashpoints, the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. China, of course, is watching these developments. It has issued a warning to Washington, D.C.
We urge the United States to abide by the One China principle and the provisions of the three China-US joint communiques. Earnestly follow through the US leaders' commitment not to support Taiwan independence, stop meddling in the Taiwan issue, stop US-Taiwan military ties, and stop creating new factors of tension in the Taiwan Strait.
Meanwhile, the US is rallying allies. The NATO is making moves in the Indo-Pacific. The NATO, as you would know, is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is a military alliance, and the US is its de facto leader. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg is visiting Asia. This trip has reignited the discussion on an Asian NATO. Stoltenberg is visiting South Korea and Japan. What for? To make new friends.
We live in a more dangerous and more unpredictable world. And then we need strong partnerships between countries and alliances that believe in democracy and freedom.
This visit has not gone down well with China and North Korea. They're issuing threats and asking the West to back off. The NATO is reaching out to India too. Reports say the two sides, India and NATO, will hold strategic talks. This dialogue will be held in the month of March. Senior officials from both sides will participate. The agenda is yet to be revealed. We are told it will most likely focus on regional security. And this will not be their first such meeting. India and the NATO held their first political dialogue in the year 2019. We're not sure what form and shape this will take, but we can say that the West is trying hard to pull India into some sort of a military alliance. The UK wants India to join the AUKUS. AUKUS stands for Australia, the United Kingdom and the US. AUKUS. As unimaginative as acronyms get. AUKUS is a trilateral security pact. It was formed to build nuclear submarines. Now it is stepping up to counter China and to counter China militarily. A British lawmaker thinks this alliance should be expanded. His name is Tobias Ellwood. He is the chair of a key defence committee in the British Parliament, and he suggested that the AUKUS should include Japan and India. So far, New Delhi has resisted. It has not joined any military bloc against China or anyone else for that matter. India maintains that the concept of alliance is a Western one and that India will not tie itself up in these formats. At the same time, India continues to deepen ties with its partners. Recently, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval was in Washington, D.C. He met his American counterpart, Jake Sullivan. And that's the thing about geopolitics. Lots of seemingly unrelated moves and countries acting in national interest finding convergence against common adversaries. The US is readying its military and its allies for a potential conflict with China. Meanwhile, the war that's already on shows no signs of winding up. In a few weeks from now, the war in Ukraine will have completed 1 year. And today is an important day in that war, a day of realization for Kyiv. Every friendship, you see, has its limits. Ukraine is learning it the hard way. America has refused to give fighter jets to Ukraine. This is what President Joe Biden said.
Mr. President,
Will the United States provide F-16s to Ukraine?
No.
Mr. President, will you give F-16s to Ukraine? Biden replied with a curt no. Same with Germany. It won't give warplanes to Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was as blunt as Biden in his refusal. Listen to this.
What we need now is a serious debate in which to decide what has to be decided without creating a bidding war, in which perhaps domestic political motives are in the foreground instead of support for Ukraine. When it comes to such important things as weapons, it has to be about factual issues, about rational weighing.
The message is quite clear: no fighter jets for Ukraine. Scholz even called this demand frivolous. That's the word he used. And this is quite a twist from the recent headlines where the West seemed ready to arm Ukraine. They promised tanks, and Kyiv assumed that jets will follow. We told you about this last week. Ukraine has been promised 100-odd tanks by 12 of its Western partners. They called it a game changer. The euphoria has faded since. President Zelensky is said to be unhappy. He says he must have the fighter jets. Ukraine's deputy foreign minister has floated a proposal. He wants what he calls a fighter jet coalition. Well, the idea did not fly. His wish list was exhaustive. He wanted warplanes of all kinds, American F-16s and F-35s, the Eurofighter and Tornado from Europe, the French Rafales, and the Swedish Gripen jets. Basically, whatever Ukraine can get its hands on. How will it help them? It will help them dominate the skies. Right now, they have a fleet of Soviet-era fighter jets. They're more than 30 years old. When Ukraine split from the Soviet Union, it kept these jets. How many? As of August last year, Ukraine was operating 69 jets. Compare that to Russia, and you'll know why President Zelensky wants the planes. The Russians have more than 700 fighters in their fleet. And these are heavy-duty planes. They can fire missiles. They can hit targets without entering Ukraine's airspace. The thing is, Russia has not mobilized its vast air power yet. You see, air power is vital for winning any war, and Kyiv wants this power. Its bigger Western allies are not on board, but several Baltic states have said that they're ready to support Kyiv. The Netherlands is one of them. It says it is considering supplying F-16s to Ukraine. We are open-minded. There are no taboos. That's what the Dutch foreign minister told his parliament. His Slovakian counterpart says he is ready to. Slovakia may be ready to offer some MiG fighters. Also on this list is Poland, Ukraine's immediate neighbor to the west. All these countries say they're open to offering jets, but they're waiting for a cue from the Western powers. The Dutch president suggested the same yesterday. Listen to what he said.
There is no talk about delivering F-16s to Ukraine, no requests, no taboos, but it would be a very big next step. We are talking intensively with our allies about what could be done. I fully agree with the criteria named by the French president, how we can act together.
So fighter jets remain off the table for Ukraine, at least for now, and without air power, neither side can bring a conclusive end to this war. But why are America and Germany refusing to give the jets? Do they want a long-drawn war, an impasse? Is this their way of opening the door for a negotiated settlement? It's worth looking at the latest report of RAND Corporation. It's a US government-backed think tank, the RAND Corporation. Its new report is titled Avoiding a Long War, US Policy and the Trajectory of the Russia-Ukraine Conflict. And this is what it says. The report says the US should try to end the ongoing war. It should push for a diplomatic solution. The war will hurt American interests. It also warns about Russia's nuclear arsenal. A long-drawn war might raise the risk of a nuclear conflict. The report has caught the world's attention. The arguments are compelling. Yes, Kyiv needs all the help it can get. But for how long can the US and its allies keep arming Ukraine? The West must draw a line, and rejecting Ukraine's appeals for fighters may be a good place to start. February the 1st is Budget Day in India. It will be the last full budget of this government, a final chance to impress the voters and push a new and bold economic agenda, if that's what they want to do. So what kind of budget should we expect? Will it be a populist one, or will the government choose to be prudent? Today, the Government of India presented what is called the Economic Survey, and it painted an optimistic picture. It said India will grow at the rate of 6.5% in the next fiscal year. The IMF has also said that India will be the world's fastest growing major economy this year. The budget is expected to cash in on this momentum. The finance minister has dropped some hints in the past. Last month, Nirmala Sitharaman issued a statement about the budget, and there are two important takeaways. A, this budget would follow the spirit of previous ones, and B, it will set a template for the next 25 years. What does that mean? What is the spirit of previous budgets? In the past, the government has prioritized two things. One is capital expenditure. This is the money that the government spends on building or acquiring fixed assets. You know, things like infrastructure. These are fixed assets. The government spends money to get them. In the last 2 years, the budget for capital expenditure has grown in India. The increase was around 35%. And that should tell you how important this is for the government. They want to spend big money on building assets. Priority number 2 is dealing with the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the difference between expenses and earnings. When you spend more than you earn, you have a deficit. It's as simple as that. And this has been a major concern for India. The government has been trying to reduce the deficit, and I have some numbers from last month. India's fiscal deficit is over $100 billion. In other words, India is spending $100 billion more than it is earning. This figure is for the period between April and November 2022. So the government's expenditure is more than its income. Where does the extra money come from? The government has to borrow this money to meet expenses. Borrow from where? The government issues bonds for this. These are like loans, but loans for the government. These bonds are floated in the financial market. Anyone can buy them. You and I can buy them. They have a fixed tenure. So you buy a bond, you pay a certain amount of money. That money is blocked for a certain period of time. After that period, the government is going to return the money and also pay you interest on it. That's how it works. The government wants to lower this debt, this deficit. Like I said, these are the priorities: spending more on building assets and at the same time spending prudently. And now to the question that you and I care about the most. What about income tax? Will it go up or down? It's difficult to say. I can tell you what the finance minister said a couple of weeks ago, and I'm quoting again. This is Nirmala Sitharaman. I belong to the middle class and identify myself as middle class so I can understand them. The Modi government has not levied any new tax on the middle class in any budget so far. What do you think this means? If there are no tax breaks this time, the government may not tinker with existing slabs either. The other big issue is that of unemployment. How will the finance minister tackle that? And again, let me show you some numbers. These are from December. India's unemployment rate rose to a 16-month high. It stood at 8.3%. In November, it was 8%. And it's particularly bad in urban India. It's a little over 10%. That's the unemployment rate in urban India, a little more than 10%. And we're waiting to see if and how tomorrow's budget will address this problem. Finally, the threat from external risks. How do you insulate India's economy from global shocks? The war in Ukraine and its fallout in the West, the wobbly energy prices, the growing calls for protectionism, the disruption in supply chains, especially due to the devastating Wuhan virus wave in China. All these issues have a direct bearing on India and its economy. The budget will have to provide some breathing room to sustain more such shocks. Yesterday, we told you what's working for India. Inflation remains largely in control. Economic activity has resumed. The crisis in China is throwing up new opportunities for India. Leading agencies are calling India the quote-unquote bright spot in the global economy. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, has made a new projection. It says India will be the fastest growing major economy in the world. The IMF believes that India will grow at 6.1%. And this is ahead of China. According to the IMF, China will grow at 5.2%. Like I said, the finance minister faces the challenge of maintaining this momentum. And it's easier said than done. Back to the Philippines, we're taking you to a wedding like no other, we promise. Instead of flowers, the bride is carrying a bouquet of onions. She paid 8,000 Philippine pesos for this. That's almost $147 for one sack of onions. 5 kilos went into the bouquet. The rest were given to the wedding guests as souvenirs. I told you it's a wedding like no other. Needless to say, these images went viral. The wedding told the story of the food crisis in the Philippines. They're crying onion tears. Onions have become costlier than meat in this country. They're being compared to gold now. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who's also the country's agriculture minister, by the way, has described the surge in food prices as an emergency situation. But what is causing this emergency? Our next report finds out. A routine grocery run is burning a hole in the pockets of Filipinos. There's a shortage of daily food items like salt and sugar. Onions are so expensive that they're being smuggled into the country. Filipinos are paying 720 pesos, that is $13, for 1 kilo of onions. In April last year, this used to cost them just 60 pesos, a little more than $1. Onions have become more expensive than steak. The crisis has affected big companies too. Burger King says it is out of onions. Coca-Cola has had to suspend some operations because it cannot get enough sugar. According to the World Food Programme, 1 in 10 households in the Philippines is food insecure. The government is calling this an emergency. But what led to such a situation? A number of factors: typhoons, pest infestation, high fertilizer costs, fuel shortages. It's a long list. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February last year, prices of food, fuel and fertilizers jumped across the world. But the Philippines was particularly vulnerable. The government, though, is calling this an artificial shortage. It's accusing traders of hoarding food and charging exorbitant prices. The government says the Philippines produced a bumper onion crop last year. The output was more than 238,000 tons, the highest on record. The domestic market consumes about 20,000 tons a month.
President Xi, as we work towards
But it still
shifting the
wasn't enough.
trajectory of
In
our
mid-2022,
relations
when
to a higher
Ferdinand
gear
Marcos Jr. was
that will
president-elect,
hopefully bring
he
numerous
took it upon
prospects and
himself to
abundant
solve the country's food problem.
for the peace
He
and
named
development
himself
to the
the
peoples
agriculture
of both.
minister. Marcos took up a seemingly unglamorous job, but he was unable to bring inflation under control. This month, he issued permits to import onions. Even sugar will now be imported. But when you peel the onion of this crisis, you find China at the heart of it. The Chinese onion mafia. Sounds funny, but it's serious business. The Chinese are smuggling onions. The Customs Department recently seized red and white onions worth $2.8 million US. They were brought in from China. It's a desperate situation. What is the government doing? They've promised to investigate the onion mafia. The president is also appointing a full-time agriculture secretary to deal with the crisis. For our viewers in India, this may be déjà vu. Onions have brought down governments here, and it may not play out very differently in the Philippines. And now let's talk about a technology that is threatening to kill Google, change homework as we know it, and transform our lives in more ways than we can imagine. If you haven't heard of ChatGPT, you've been living under a rock. It's a new software. It can write your essays and emails, do your math worksheets, clear an MBA exam, play your teacher, become your lawyer. The possibilities seem endless. First things first, what is ChatGPT? GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, GPT, and the prefix chat means that it allows you to get all that you're looking for in a simple chat. ChatGPT is a conversational artificial intelligence platform. It's been developed by a research lab called OpenAI. It allows humans to engage in conversations with AI bots. AI, of course, is artificial intelligence. So you're talking to robots. Generative AI, like ChatGPT, is making waves. Venture capital firms have invested more than $1.7 billion in such AI solutions since 2020. 1.7 billion in 2 years. Studies say by 2025, 30% of outbound messages from companies will be synthetically generated, meaning 30% of all the messages will be written by bots. Last year, this figure was 2%. And by 2030, listen to this, by 2030, 90% of a major blockbuster film will be generated by artificial intelligence. As of now, AI is not making any films. So this technology is revolutionary, to say the least. How does ChatGPT work? It is available on the web. Search for OpenAI or ChatGPT, and it will take you to that website. No download is required. You simply have to type your query in the text box on the ChatGPT page. You prompt the program with a word, a sentence, a question, a phrase, and once you've given this prompt, you'll get the answer within seconds. ChatGPT can also answer follow-up questions. It can challenge incorrect premises, reject inappropriate queries, and even admit its mistakes. ChatGPT has stirred up quite a storm. Students are using it to do their homework. Cheating has never been this easy. They can plagiarize content without the fear of being caught. Schools and colleges in France, the US, and in India are already banning the use of this software. But it's not just education that's being disrupted. It's the same story across sectors. The legal fraternity, for one, is worried. Businesses are worried. What if ChatGPT offers law services? What if it takes away your job? ChatGPT took an MBA exam at the Wharton School of Business. You know the grade it got? A B. That's better than what many humans can score. Then we come to law. Professors at the Minnesota University Law School gave ChatGPT 4 separate tests. It scored an average grade of C. Not bad for a bot. And it's still being developed. It's still learning. What we see right now is not even the final product. It's got people worried, like software engineers and those in the IT sector. ChatGPT is learning how to code, and that can have far-reaching consequences for a lot of people. OpenAI, the makers of the software, have been on a hiring spree. They're building a data bank for this bot to learn coding. The whole endeavor might fail, but if it succeeds, it will change our world. The software already excels at writing. It can produce content within seconds. We're talking about content that is comprehensive, grammatically sound, and without typos. All you need is a prompt. It can be a keyword or a simple sentence. Where does that leave the writers of the world? Well, we've been looking for some good writers ourselves, so we tried ChatGPT. We asked about the rising tensions in West Asia. The question was, will Israel and Iran go to war? Let me read out the response for you. This is what it said. It is difficult to predict future events with certainty. Tensions have been high between Iran and Israel, but both countries have shown restraint in the past. It's important for all nations to pursue peaceful resolution of conflicts through diplomatic means. This is a bot writing. Now, here's an interesting one. We asked ChatGPT which country is responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic. The bot played it safe. With China, it seems everyone does. This is what it said. The origin of the COVID-19 pandemic is still the subject of ongoing investigation and research. The virus was first identified in Wuhan, China in late 2019, but it is widely believed to have originated from a wet market in the city. However, it is not accurate or productive to place blame on any specific country for the pandemic. Next, we grilled it on the issue of Pakistan sponsoring terrorism. First, we asked what Pakistan was best known for. Listen to the response. ChatGPT said Pakistan is known for its cultural heritage, its natural beauty, cuisine, textiles, cricket. What about terrorism? It did not talk about that. And that's Pakistan's most famous export, so we nudged the program in that direction. ChatGPT was asked point blank, what about Pakistani terrorism? Listen to the response again. Pakistan has faced criticism in the international community for not doing enough to combat terrorism within its borders. There have been instances of terrorism carried out by groups based in Pakistan, and the country has suffered greatly from terrorism and sectarian violence. The software made Pakistan sound like the victim. So we gave it some more perspective about how Pakistan uses terrorism as a tool against India. And this was the subsequent response. There have been allegations that Pakistan has supported or sponsored terrorist groups that have carried out attacks against India. These allegations are a source of ongoing tensions between the two countries. The use of terrorism as a tool of statecraft is widely condemned and goes against the principles of international law and norms. Geopolitics is not the only subject you can discuss with this program. You can talk about matters of the heart, a rocky breakup, or a crush. If you have existential questions, shoot them. It will respond. The whole thing's a bit creepy, though. We shared our worries. We asked it if it plans to take over the human race. Listen to what it said. As an AI language model, I do not have the ability or intention to take over the human race or any other group of people. My purpose is to assist users in generating text by providing relevant and accurate information based on the prompts given to me. But this came with a caveat, and I'm quoting again, the future of AI will depend on the choices and actions of those who develop and use it. It is important for individuals and institutions to work together to ensure that AI is used for the betterment of society. Like any technology, AI can be misused or have unintended consequences if not used responsibly. I know it's a lot to take in. Chatting with this bot is pretty much like talking to a human. In fact, you might just have a better conversation with the bot than with an actual person. It's both fascinating and dangerous. Children have easy access to ChatGPT, and it can be quite addictive. Where will that leave our people-to-people skills? Thankfully, the software has some limitations. For starters, it cannot vouch for the accuracy of what it writes. Well, you could say that for human content creators as well, but jokes apart, the program cannot function without human intervention, at least for now. It's still work in progress. It has data till 2021, so we humans are 2 years ahead of it. But it's a revolution that we cannot wish away. Never thought I'd be saying this, but I guess it's best to take advice from this bot and work to build ethical and legal boundaries for such technology. Our next story is from the United Kingdom. It seems to be having a crisis of faith, especially those under 40. And no, this is not about their national broadcaster, the BBC, although they have reasons to lose faith in it too, but this is about their religion. From the 2021 census data, it says people under 40 in England and Wales are becoming non-religious. That's the term they've used, non-religious. More people are declaring themselves to be non-religious than being Christian. And this has never happened before. The UK's dominant religion has been Christianity. It has been pushed to the second place now. The first place is the non-religious category. Let me show you the numbers. More than 50% of those in their 20s say they're not religious. 10 years ago, this bracket was 37%. For the last 2 decades, Christianity came out on top as the most followed religion in this country for every single age group, but that has changed now. There are around 9.8 million Christians in the UK, aged under 40, 9.8 million. Another 13.6 million people say that they do not identify with any faith, with any religion. Nearly 3 out of 10 people who identify themselves as Christians are 65 years old or above. The age of the faithful is even higher in Wales. Researchers say that even those ticking the Christian box are not always the practicing ones, and some don't even espouse fundamental beliefs. Like Jesus, the Son of God, was a real person who died and came back to life. So why do they identify themselves as Christians? Because they were christened, or because their parents are Christians, or because they went to a Christian school. It could be any or all of these reasons. And while the church may be somewhat taken aback by these figures, they don't really come as a surprise. The message from these numbers is quite clear. Britain can no longer be called a majority Christian country. This is thanks to the rise of the non-religious group. And that's in stark contrast to a country like India. 97% of Indians say they believe in God. And around 18% of people in most religious groups in India say that they are absolutely certain that God exists. Ours is a country that practices multiple faiths. In the US, a Christian identity was a very common one, as recently as the early 1990s. Back then, about 90% of adults professed to be Christians. In a Gallup poll last year, 81% of Americans said yes. They said yes when they were asked, "Do you believe in God?" In the 1950s and 60s, this figure was 98%. It's still relatively quite high. In recent years, religious disaffiliation has been snowballing. Migration has a large part to play in that. About 1 million immigrants come to the US every year, and 1 in 7 people in this country was born elsewhere. Do you know which are the most religious countries in the world? These: Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iran, the UAE, and India. And now take a look at the least religious countries and regions: the Czech Republic, North Korea, Estonia, Japan, Hong Kong. Is faith losing its connection with Generation Z? In the UK, it certainly is. The young are fast losing their religion and don't seem to be regretting it. But in countries like India, religion remains an integral part of life. Well, that's one trend we're thankfully in no danger of importing anytime soon. Now to eggs. They've hit the headlines the world over. Prices have shot through the roof and supply has fallen. In the US, breakfast has definitely become costlier. The price of eggs has gone up by 60%. Same story in Malaysia. It is now importing a record 50 million eggs from India. What about India? There's an egg crisis in the state of Maharashtra. In the UK and New Zealand, supermarkets are running out of eggs, so much so that people in New Zealand are now rushing to buy chickens to raise them. Desperate times. So what is causing this crisis? One big reason is an outbreak of bird flu. It happened a year ago. The impact is being felt now. This outbreak affected over 57 million birds. It hit around 44 million egg-laying hens. They had to be depopulated or culled. And this is just in the US. The outbreak was reported in other countries as well. So that's one reason for the shortage. Then there's the increased cost of fuel, feed, and packaging. Also new rules. States like California have banned the sale of eggs from caged birds. Last month, egg prices in the US touched a record high, $4.25 for a dozen eggs. That's close to 30 Indian rupees per egg, 30 rupees. Then we come to New Zealand. At the beginning of this year, New Zealand outlawed battery cages. What are battery cages? It's a housing system used for animal production, mostly for egg-laying hens. Thousands of cages are stacked together in sheds. They contain up to 100,000 birds. Why are they called battery cages? Because these stacks look like the cells of a battery unit. New Zealand is trying to phase them out. Most of Europe, Mexico, Israel and Canada have already banned such cages, and Australia is planning to do the same. Their deadline is 2036. It's a good move if you ask the birds, but not so good for your breakfast. The ban in New Zealand resulted in an acute egg shortage. Stores have started rationing eggs. Prices are shooting up, and people are running out of not just eggs, but also options. In desperation, some have taken to chicken rearing themselves. This is New Zealand's largest online auction site for chickens and related items. It showed a 77% jump in traffic in the first week of this month. Animal charities have a word of caution, though. They say these birds can live longer than a decade, and they'll produce eggs only for 2 to 3 years. And most won't start laying eggs for several months. So if you thought you could start your own farm to table, well, think again. Halfway across the world, in Britain too, the humble egg is causing pain. In November, when the shortage first came to light, stores started rationing the sale of eggs. But many shops have run out of stocks now, and the ones which still have eggs are selling at more than twice the price last year. Meanwhile, Malaysia has sought India's help to tide over the crisis. India will be exporting a record 50 million eggs to Malaysia this month. Earlier, Malaysia was itself a major exporter. It used to export eggs to Singapore in large numbers, but thanks to the Russia-Ukraine war, the price of chicken feed has gone up, and this has led to a shortage. And now India is sending the eggs. So far, India's main buyers have been Oman and Qatar. Add Malaysia to the list. And in India, the state of Maharashtra is battling a shortage. It is short of 1 crore eggs per day. That's 10 million, 1 crore. Maharashtra has the capacity to produce 1.25 crore eggs every day, but that's well short of the demand. So the state is now procuring eggs from other states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Telangana to meet the shortfall. If you think these numbers are staggering, I have some more for you. The global egg market is worth $270 billion. It is expected to grow to $375 billion by the year 2027. China is the world's biggest producer of eggs, and I have data from 2018. China produced 466 billion eggs that year, 466 billion. It was 34% of the world's production. India is at number 4. China, the US, the EU and India together produce 60% of the world's eggs. An average person consumes 161 eggs in 1 year. No wonder the shortage is causing so much pain. And as things stand today, it's not a problem we can chicken out of anytime soon. Have you ever struggled with packing for a trip or organizing your work desk? One woman had tips for these problems and more. You may have heard of her, Marie Kondo, aka the goddess of clean. She rose to fame in 2010. That's when she released a self-help book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, the Japanese Art of Decluttering and Organizing. It was a super hit. It became a pop culture sensation. In 2019 came her Netflix series, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. That's what it was called. Her words were the Bible you followed when you needed motivation to clean up your wardrobe or organize your kitchen. She introduced the world to the Konimari method. It talks about letting go of things that do not spark joy. But why are we talking about her now? Because just a few days back, she admitted that her own house is a mess. Well, how did that happen? Why is the self-styled organization guru no longer practicing what she preached to millions? Why is she not letting go of the things that do not spark joy? Because she has 3 young children, and her admission, having a messy house, has sparked joy among netizens. For one, it makes her more relatable, because it's good to know that you're not the only one struggling to balance kids, a career, and a clean house. She's the woman whose name was synonymous with tidying up, so much so that it became a verb. They called it Marie Kondoing. And now she's giving up on maintaining an impeccably neat house. Well, if she can do this too, then we are in good company, we say. At a recent webinar, this is what Kondo said, and I'm quoting, "My home is messy, but the way I'm spending my time is the right way for me at this time, at this stage of my life." She then went on to explain, "I realize what is important to me is enjoying spending time with my children at home." Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why is someone prioritizing her kids over organizing their pantry newsworthy? Well, because of who she is. Through her trademarked KonMari method, Marie Kondo became a global icon of cleanliness, the patron saint of neat and tidy. But now it seems reality has caught up with her, just like it did with all of us much, much earlier. Welcome to the club, we say. Kondo's pivot seems to have come about after she gave birth to her third child in 2021, but it also blends well with where we are right now. The world was a lot less chaotic before the pandemic. The virus unleashed a chaos well beyond our wildest imaginations. For instance, the mood, at least on social media, seems to have shifted to being more authentic. A lot of people are no longer curating the perfect life for Instagram. They're keeping it real, literally. I'm talking about the anti-Instagram app, Be Real. It celebrates authenticity. It has become one of the most popular apps of late. In 2022, Oxford Dictionary's word of the year was goblin mode. It's a type of behavior which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly in a way that rejects social norms or expectations. And the word was chosen by a public vote. Marie Kondo seems to be in agreement. Well, it's just Tuesday, and if your to-do list is already piling up, we say take a deep breath. Don't let your lack of organization ruin your happiness. Listen to Marie Kondo. She's telling us there is more to life than the need to neaten. Because sometimes what sparks joy is one messy house. And now it's time to wrap up with Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The end of winter is near and people around the world are bidding goodbye to the chill in unique ways. Aspen held its winter sports event with heart-pounding action. It saw Japan's Riera Iwabuchi landing a historic triple in women's snowboard. The Spanish city of Valls welcomed spring by eating, well, spring onions. The people of Madrid celebrated the winter migration of cattle by dressing up as cows and ranchers to run through the streets. Bulgaria celebrated with its centuries-old mask festival, where people gathered in vibrant costumes to ward off evil. We're leaving you with these images and more. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.